You're a subcontractor and you're cancelling last minute. Come and apologize on your knees. I don't remember doing something as rude as cancelling last minute. I informed them ahead of time that I wouldn't be attending. And yet, to demand that I apologize on my knees is just ridiculous. Weren't you fired last week? I said, mocking Will. There was a brief pause, and Will reacted foolishly. What? He was caught off guard by my unexpected words and seemed confused. My name is James Johnson, a 42-year-old office worker. Or rather, that was my situation until recently. Now, I'm preparing to take over my father's company. I used to work in sales for a major food manufacturer. However, my father's company is a subcontractor for a large manufacturing plant, so my sales expertise probably won't be very useful. As the future president, I'll need leadership skills, decisiveness, and the strength to say no to clients' unreasonable demands. I ended up taking over the company because my father fell ill. My father's company is a small business with about 30 employees, barely managing to make ends meet each month. We've somehow managed to survive so far, but the company is always on the brink of collapse, with no promising future in sight. I struggled a lot with whether I should quit my job to take over. In fact, my father didn't really want that either. But when I listened to him, weakened by his illness, I felt a strong urge to step in and take over. This feeling was largely influenced by our business partner. Our company works under a company called M Industries. M Industries is the primary contractor for S Corporation. In this hierarchy, if S Corporation is the parent, M Industries is the child, and we come after that. M Industries, sitting in the middle, has been making my father's life difficult. Originally, both M Industries and our company were subcontractors under S Corporation. At that time, we were on equal footing. However, the previous head of M Industries proposed uniting the subcontractors to negotiate with the parent company. And several companies, including ours, came under the umbrella of M Industries. The president of M Industries at the time was very capable. Because of this new structure, the subcontractors benefited in many ways. However, when the president of M Industries changed, the entire structure was turned upside down. M Industries began to impose unreasonable demands on the subcontractors under its umbrella, including us, doing as they pleased. The new president is just an average person, a puppet really. The one pulling the strings is Will Smith, the manager, who exploits the subcontractors. I couldn't tolerate Will's unreasonable treatment. I couldn't abandon my father, who had suffered under Will's tyranny. So, I decided to quit my job, take over from my father, and confront Will. Will is a ruthless and greedy man who only wields the stick without ever offering a carrot. When subcontractors request price increases due to the rising cost of living or to improve employee conditions, Will ignores them and instead threatens to cut ties. Even when subcontractors seek better working conditions, Will blocks their demands from reaching the parent company, S Corporation. You subcontractors have a lot of nerve. Stop being so selfish and figure it out yourselves. Don't rely on us. There are plenty of other subcontractors out there, you know. If we push back even a little, this is the kind of response we get. In the end, the subcontractors have no choice but to give up. We can't let this continue. A fire of defiance ignited within me. I don't engage in battles I can't win. That's my policy. So I had no intention of entering a fight I knew I'd lose. I believed I could win. In fact, I have a friend at S Corporation. Moreover, he's at the factory where we work, so he's not entirely unrelated to this issue. I plan to enlist his help to bring Will down. His name is Steve Williams. We were high school classmates and judo club rivals. Our skills were evenly matched, with victories and losses going back and forth, and we respected each other's abilities. That relationship continues today, and we invite each other out for drinks a few times a year. As I was preparing to take over my father's business, I invited Steve out for a drink. The truth is, I'm taking over my father's company, and I need your advice, Steve. After we toasted with large mugs of draft beer, I got straight to the point. So, you're taking over the business. Now that you mention it, your dad's company handled some work at our factory, right? That means you'll be in charge of our work now. Steve understands what I'm getting at without needing everything spelled out. He's always been sharp like that. We can share our thoughts without many words. Maybe that's why our relationship has lasted so long. Yeah, that's right, and there's a bit of a problem. I told Steve about the reality of M Industries. Will, the manager at M Industries, takes a middleman's cut while ignoring all subcontractor requests. Moreover, when S Corporation assigns additional work, Will accepts without considering our situation and imposes unreasonable tasks. We've been forced to give kickbacks, attend Will's private events, and pay support money. I told Steve all about the subcontractors' grievances. Steve furrowed his brows as he listened. Those guys are doing such terrible things. I know Manager Will. When dealing with us, he's always humble and ingratiating. Yeah, but to the subcontractors, we're treated like dirt. It's not just us. It's all the companies working under M Industries. Steve listened intently to my story. So, what exactly do you want me to do? Steve leaned in, ready to engage. If there's a problem, he acts quickly. This hasn't changed since we were young. First, could you tell me how much M Industries is contracted for with your company? When I asked, Steve's face grew serious. The contract amount. It's easy to find out, but even for a close friend, discussing contract details with an outsider is a bit. I expected Steve to be hesitant. He's a straightforward guy. He adheres strictly to rules and promises. On the other hand, I'm more of a pragmatist and believe that if it's reasonable, it's okay to bend the rules a bit. We've often clashed over this, but in the end, Steve always gives in. I promise it won't cause any trouble. If I know the contract amount, I can make a beneficial proposal, please. I'm begging you. I clasped my hands together and put my head down to the table in a plea. Steve quickly rushed to stop me, looking flustered. Okay, James, you've always been like this. Whenever you ask me for a favor, you always go overboard with the that. Steve said with a wry smile. If you're that serious, I'll trust you. You've never let me down. He probably felt conflicted inside, but there was a hint of happiness in Steve's expression. It reminded me of the time in high school when we dealt with our unmotivated judo seniors. He had the same look on his face. Steve is strict about rules, but hates injustice the most. That's the kind of man he is. A few days later, Steve met my request and showed me the documents. When I saw the amount paid by S Corporation to M Industries, I was stunned. They were getting that much. I muttered to myself. At the same time, I felt confident of victory. With this, I could get rid of Will and M Industries. I began to work behind the scenes based on this information. A month later, I got the chance to launch a preemptive strike against Will. Will holds a golf tournament twice a year, in spring and fall. Although he leaves all the arrangements to his subordinates and does nothing himself. Subcontractors are invited, but they are expected to pay sponsorship fees. While Will's subordinates pay a $50 participation fee, subcontractors must pay $100. Participating is no fun because we have to cater to Will's whims. We don't want to participate, but we are almost forced to join. It's ridiculous to spend a precious holiday paying high fees and taking care of Will. Moreover, part of the collected money is used for prizes. But the rest goes into Will's pocket, making it a nuisance for subcontractors. I decided to use this invitation as a chance to rebel. Manager Will, I'm sorry, but for the next golf tournament, none of our employees will be participating. The day the invitation arrived, I called Will without hesitation. An annoyed voice came through the receiver. You, the second-generation subcontractor, you don't seem to get it. You have no right to refuse. Each company must send at least 10 people. This is an unwritten rule. Ask your old man. Will spoke condescendingly. This kind of pressure must have driven my father to mental distress. Thinking about it made me furious. Unspoken rule, my apologies. But those agreements were with my father's generation. I haven't been told anything like that by you. And even if I had, I wouldn't agree. This golf tournament isn't business. I can't let your hobby waste the time of my valuable employees. I spoke quickly, not giving Will a chance to interrupt. Then Will raised his voice. Cancelling at the last minute as a mere subcontractor. You better come and apologize on your knees. I didn't remember doing anything as rude as cancelling last minute. I informed them ahead of time that we wouldn't participate. Yet, demanding that I apologize on my knees was ridiculous. We received the tournament invitation just moments ago. I responded immediately, saying we wouldn't participate. How is that last-minute cancelling? I replied mockingly, and Will's voice grew even louder. How dare you speak to me like that? Who do you think you're talking to? You're just a subcontractor. You better know what happens if you make me angry. Will's tone grew harsher. But the angrier he got, the more ridiculous he seemed to me. People lacking confidence often try to use loud voices to assert themselves. And at the same time, words can lead to trouble. What happens if I make you angry? Oh, by the way, I'm recording this conversation, so you might want to watch what you say. I replied lightly, and Will's shouts came through. Are you mocking me? I'm not afraid of any recording. I'm terminating our contract with your company. Will's favorite threat rang out. He's used this phrase countless times to bully subcontractors into submission. But unfortunately for him, it doesn't affect me. Weren't you fired last week? I mocked Will. There was a moment of silence, and then Will responded foolishly. What? He was caught off guard by my unexpected words and seemed confused. He thinks he can always treat us subcontractors like dirt. But soon, he'll be the one out of a job. I hinted at this fact. But Will likely has no idea that his position is shaky. Why would I get fired? My job is to fire your company. Will retorted angrily. I didn't take him seriously and replied casually. I don't think you have the authority to talk about our contract. But are you sure you want to terminate it? No offense, but your company doesn't have any workers, right? So, we're not an optional part of your operation. Without our workers, won't your factory be in trouble? My unexpected counterattack left Will speechless. He's used the threat of contract termination to keep subcontractors in line. But M Industries doesn't have capable workers anymore. They used to, but they laid them off to cut costs and turned into a company that only skims off middleman fees. M Industries depends on subcontractors to operate. Yet, Will has always treated us like dirt. It's time he pays for that. If your company won't do it, I'll find someone else, dangle a carrot, and subcontractors will come running. Will's voice sounded distorted. It's just a bluff. There's no way he'll easily find another company willing to work under M Industries. Nowadays, we're in an era of labor shortages. And there's no company that can pick up our specialized work overnight. Do you really think you can find one that easily? If you can't, you'll be in big trouble. The plant manager might give you a hard time, I said, trying to provoke Will's anxiety. Of course, I can find one. Besides, if we terminate your contract, your company will be finished. You're just a small business without savings, right? I'm telling you, come and apologize now, and I might forgive you. His words were harsh, but his tone had softened noticeably. He's trying to give me, a rookie president, a chance to explain myself. It looks like the negotiation skills I honed in sales are paying off here. Compared to the seasoned clients I faced, Will is nothing. I decided to press even harder. I'm not apologizing. I haven't done anything wrong. If anything, Manager Will, you should be the one apologizing to me. As soon as I said that, Will yelled. Why should I apologize to you? I'm with the parent company. You subcontractors are on a different level. As usual, Will's words were filthy, but his voice sounded slightly shaky. Will was definitely scared of me. He was afraid our company would pull out. It seems we're not getting anywhere. We'll be withdrawing our services starting tomorrow. If you can find a replacement, go ahead. We'll look for other clients. Hey, wait a minute. I heard him say something as I moved my phone away from my ear, but I hung up abruptly. Will called several times after that, but I ignored him. This whole exchange happened just before the end of the workday. After that, Will had to explain the situation to S Corporation the next day. According to Steve, Will claimed that our company unilaterally terminated the contract. He wanted to make it look like the subcontractor was at fault. But my recording would prove that to be a lie. The next morning, I went to S Corporation's factory with my employees. I saw Will rushing around and our eyes met. I didn't miss the relief in Will's eyes. Hey, you showed up after all. Go ahead and apologize. I'll forget about yesterday if you do. Will had a smug smile on his face. But to me, it looked like his cheek was twitching. He must have been relieved inside. He probably thought I had come to apologize with my employees. But he was greatly mistaken. I had no intention of begging Will. I gave Will a glance and walked past him towards the factory's management building. Hey, don't ignore me. A flustered Will stepped in front of me. Please step aside. I have no business with you, I said coldly and brushed past him. Then Will's angry voice came from behind. Don't you dare do as you please. I am responsible for supervising you subcontractors. If you want to work here, you better be respectful to me. It seemed he didn't understand the situation. I stopped, and Will quickly moved to block my path again. He approached me with his nose almost touching mine. He was trying to intimidate me, but since I was taller, I ended up looking down on him. You just mentioned supervisory responsibility, right? Then rest assured, we're no longer associated with your company. I grinned at Will. He frowned, not understanding my words, and glared at me. Don't mess with me, you're our subcontractor, Will shouted. The employees behind me started murmuring. Maybe they were reacting to Will's outburst or were surprised that I wasn't backing down. We were your subcontractor until yesterday. We won't be at your beck and call anymore. Have a safe day. I smiled again as Will's face turned red. What did you say? Will said through gritted teeth. After my call with Will the previous day, I had informed Steve of our situation. Meanwhile, Will had scrambled to apologize to the plant manager. Will blamed our company for the contract dispute and groveled over the potential staffing shortfall. At this point, our company was portrayed as the one at fault for abruptly requesting contract termination, while Will played the victim. However, when Steve reported the information I had given him to the plant manager, the situation flipped. The recorded conversation between me and Will became irrefutable evidence. S Corporation was worried about any disruption in their operations. If they couldn't avoid it, the plant would face a shutdown, which would be disastrous for the company. Such an event would deliver a massive blow. Therefore, they were determined to keep the production line running. As long as operations continued smoothly, it didn't matter whether M Industries was involved or if they had a direct contract with us. This was the truth. Thus, S Corporation had no hesitation in contracting directly with us, bypassing M Industries. We were now heading to see the plant manager to finalize the contract. And at that moment, I would bring Will down. That's why we'll be working directly with S Corporation from now on. We won't be taking orders from you anymore. If you interfere, you'll regret it, I said firmly, raising my clenched fist in front of Will. Will took a step back, looking intimidated. You bastard, don't get cocky. I'm not getting cocky, just be prepared, I answered without turning around, responding to his provocation over my shoulder. There was no point in acknowledging the barking of a losing dog. Leaving Will behind, I entered the plant manager's office on the top floor of the factory's management building. The employees who came with me waited in the adjacent meeting room for the contract to be finalized. Well, let's put aside the details and get this contract signed. As soon as I entered the room, Richard, the plant manager of S Corporation, spoke. Even though Steve had already briefed him, it was my first time meeting him, so I felt a bit tense. As expected of the plant manager, his authority was evident with just a few words. There was a slight irritation in his voice, likely due to the plant's halted operations caused by the recent turmoil. We apologize for the inconvenience caused. We also want to get things up and running as soon as possible. I proceeded with the contract as per Richard's instructions. He quickly reviewed the contract I had submitted. The moment he saw the amount, he looked at me. Is this amount correct? Absolutely. I answered Richard's question without hesitation. He was likely surprised by how low our proposed amount was. This amount is more than sufficient for our company, I confirmed firmly. The amount I proposed to Richard was about 80% of what S Corporation was paying M Industries. For S Corporation, this meant a cost reduction. For us, it was 20% more than what we were receiving from M Industries. So, it was a win-win situation. Can you manage with this amount? Richard looked at me as if he had discovered something remarkable. I explained to Richard the amount we had been receiving from M Industries and why the proposed amount was fair. I also mentioned how M Industries never agreed to our requests for a price increase or listened to our appeals for better working conditions. After I finished explaining everything, Richard bit his lip. He seemed to be trying to suppress his rising anger. Those guys did such terrible things, Richard muttered, trying to contain his emotions. This was good. Everything was going as planned. I was sure Richard would confront M Industries. Convinced of this, I suggested restarting the factory operations to Richard. I have a lot more to say about M Industries, but shouldn't we prioritize getting the factory up and running first? When I said that, Richard smiled and nodded. The contract was completed smoothly, and I informed the employees waiting in the next room. Their excited voices echoed through the hallway. With this, the factory would resume operations. Richard's face showed relief. Having resolved the immediate issue, Richard and I continued discussing the future. Is your company the only one being treated unfairly by M Industries? Richard asked with wide eyes. No, it's not just us. I'm sure other subcontractors are treated the same way, I answered in a somber voice. Will is in charge, right? Yes, our previous generation suffered greatly under him. I'm sure the other subcontractors feel the same. Richard let out a deep sigh. He had trusted Will. So whenever there were price negotiations, he agreed to them to ensure the healthy operation of the plant. Naturally, he thought the increased prices were passed on to the subcontractors. But since Will became the manager, there had been no price increases at all. This means that while M Industries was getting more money from S Corporation, they weren't passing any of it to the subcontractors and were pocketing it instead. Knowing this, Richard's face twisted in anger. This must be corrected immediately. Richard growled in a low voice. I'm going to call Will in and ask him about this. Can you stay and join us? Of course. I met Richard's straightforward gaze. A few minutes later, a flustered Will rushed in. Will had tried to get other subcontractors at the factory to fill in for our company, but no one agreed, leaving him at a loss. Just then, a bell rang out and the factory started running. Will had no idea why the factory had started up, but he felt a moment of relief. Then he was suddenly called by the plant manager, so it was no wonder he was flustered. Plant manager, the production line has started up. Will might have thought this happy news would please Richard, but his face quickly clouded over when he saw me. He glared at me as if to say, "Why are you here?" Will, it's great that the factory is running again, but it's our employees who are working. I explained to Will, who didn't understand why the factory had restarted. We just signed a contract with S Corporation, so the factory started running without your involvement. Thanks for all the care you've shown us, I said sarcastically, and Will tried to cover it up with a forced smile. Oh, I see. Well, that's good, Will muttered reluctantly. Richard, who had been listening, joined the conversation with irritation. Manager Will, it seems your company has been doing some pretty shady business. Will shrank at the sudden accusation. He couldn't withstand Richard's intimidating presence. No, that's not true at all. Will glanced at me, trying to gauge my reaction. If it were just him and Richard, he would probably lie his way out, but with me here, he couldn't. We've agreed to price increases multiple times, not just for your company, but for the subcontractors as well. But since you've been in charge, there hasn't been a single increase. Will looked at me suspiciously. How much did you tell him? His eyes seemed to ask. Fine, I'll tell him everything. Manager Will, I've told him everything. How your company has been exploiting us unfairly, using the threat of contract termination to make us comply, forcing us to participate in your hobbies while extorting money from us. Everything, so there's no room for excuses. I smiled provocatively, and Will's temple throbbed with anger. Don't talk nonsense. We're giving you subcontractors work. Will stopped when he noticed Richard's glare. He grimaced awkwardly. But it was too late. Is that how you treat your partner companies? And what do you mean by giving them work? Your company takes a cut and does nothing. Richard's voice grew louder. Well, we have supervisory responsibilities. We make sure the subcontractors aren't slacking off. Will's stumbling words showed his desperation. No matter what he said now, it was clear that M Industries, and specifically Will, were in the wrong. To deliver the final blow, I pulled some documents from my bag. Plant manager, if I may, please take a look at this. I handed the documents to Richard. These were documents I had collected from various subcontractors. The documents contained complaints about the unfair treatment and pressure we had received from Will. Richard began reading through the documents. Meanwhile, Will watched uneasily, clearly uncomfortable. The only sound in the room was the rustling of the papers. This tense atmosphere seemed to make Will even more uncomfortable. When Richard finished reading, his expression was surprisingly calm. He had likely made a decision. Manager Will, I clearly underestimated you. I didn't realize you were such a terrible person. Richard's voice was completely cold. As of today, we are terminating our contract with your company. Your actions are a serious compliance violation. We cannot continue to do business with such a malicious company. Richard delivered his judgment coldly. Will tried to respond, but no words came out. Richard's cold demeanor was overpowering him. Still, Will managed to speak. If you terminate our contract, the factory will shut down. It was a desperate attempt. But Richard was unfazed. With a cold smile, he retorted, No need to worry. Today, he has proven that the factory can run without your company. In fact, it's more beneficial for us with cost savings and other advantages. It seems we were carrying quite a burdensome load. Richard sneered. Will, I don't want to see your face. I have to call in the presidents of the subcontracting companies to finalize the direct contracts, so get out. If you leave it to those subcontractors, there will be serious problems. We need to supervise. Will tried to resist desperately. But the more he talked, the weaker his voice became. I gave Will a smug smile. Manager Will, don't worry. From today, we subcontractors will be working together as one. If you find yourself without work, feel free to consult us, though the roles will be reversed. Will ground his teeth in frustration. But it was too late. What goes around comes around. As I watched Will's anguished face, I silently thought, serves you right. After that, Will reportedly went to Richard several times with proposals to improve subcontractor conditions. However, Richard discarded them without even looking. In the end, M Industries, Will's company, was removed from S Corporation's projects. M Industries had other ventures, but all were deep in the red. They had been using the unfair profits they siphoned from S Corporation to keep their other businesses afloat. Losing that revenue stream meant the company's survival was at stake. It was inevitable that the company would struggle. The president, who had always followed Will's orders, had no ability to navigate the crisis, and the company went bankrupt in a matter of months. Will, who had manipulated the incompetent president, was now suspected of breach of trust. There were also rumors that he had embezzled company funds. Investigations into these matters are ongoing. Will, who had harassed subcontractors from his position of power, is now in hiding. Where he is or what he's doing now is unknown. He's likely keeping a low profile and will probably never have another opportunity to resurface. As for me, since taking over my father's company, I have steadily expanded its scale. Through this experience, I became closely connected with the plant manager Richard and gained respect from other subcontractors. Being the bridge between the subcontractors and S Corporation has also earned me high regard. Some companies even want to join our group and leave the negotiations to us. My father's health, long troubled by Will, is improving. Taking over and growing the company may have been the remedy he needed. Lately, my father spends his free time indulging in his hobby of fishing. Avenging my father and successfully running the company have proven that my decision to leave my salaryman job and take over his company was not a mistake. Hey, James, we're expanding the production line at our factory. Can you handle it? Steve frequently entrusts us with tasks. Leave it to me. We'll take care of everything. Our business is set to thrive even more on the direct contract with the parent company.